Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody this wonderful morning? Wonderful, wonderful. Well, the title is Managing Our Klingons, or what if they're managing us? And of course, anybody here a Star Trek fan? Heard of the Klingons there? Yeah. And, but that's just a little bit of a spoof for the Klingons that we hold on to, that may be blocking our flow. So it's a little bit of a spoof there. And you know, this month, the theme for Unity is let go and let God. And Charles Fillmore provides us with the affirmation for the month. I am now free from every belief that might in any way interfere with my perfect expression of health, wealth, peace, prosperity, and perfect satisfaction in every department of life. Boy, I gotta tell you, use that one and see what happens, if you're bold enough. So, I want to open up by talking about God or the Spirit or the law can only do for you what it can do through you. So I like to use inspirational visions to get this idea. So we're going to talk about a little clip from Doug's toilet bowl philosophy for people with a crappy attitude. So I like that visual of the toilet and the sewer pipe. Now, when they put the toilets in the sewer pipe, do they put any obstructions in them? No. There are no obstructions. When you arrived on this planet, did God put any obstructions in you? There are no obstructions within one. Any obstructions were induced by us, to us, through the acceptance of negative and self-defeating thinking. So there are our own obstructions. And of course, you know, when I first started here, my sewer pipe was so plugged that I couldn't use the Drano anymore. I had to get the snake out to get it going and get it cleaned up. Anybody needed the snake here? And you know, it don't matter how much you get the snake in there, there's always a few Klingons left. So it don't matter how long you're in this, you can get surprised by a Klingon. It happened to me just recently. I've been taking, don't ever take a good positive course unless you want to deal with stuff. Of course, if you don't have any stuff, you won't have any to do with the course, but it's never happened to me. So I was just doing this Prosperity Plus 3 course that I've just finished and getting to the end there, and I'm doing really well. And you know, I was looking at Anne, and we created a very good, you know, comfortable life to do a lot of things and that. And is there more that we could do if we were able just to draw a little bit more money in? Of course, anybody can do anything more if you got a little more money. A few of your guys. Yeah, and of course, that's true. And it's okay to be comfortable, but in this philosophy, you can't stay there. It's impossible, because we're always being moved forward. And so I found out that I had a little issue around money. I didn't know that. I thought it was really good. And it wasn't anything that I thought was that big of a deal, except asking for money, or not anybody else. I could do that for anybody else. Can anybody canvass and help out any organization and ask other people for money? Yeah. And is it easy to do that for yourself? To ask other people for money? Katie says, oh, no, that's no for that. Katie, I thought we were going to talk. I was going to talk to you later. And so I thought, well, that's not a big deal. And you know, I was quite comfortable with it. And for some of you may have seen on Facebook, I had a gift bestowed on me this summer. It's the three of us were very close friends for over 50 years, and one died last year. And the other guy bought his motorcycle, and he asked me if I'd like to ride it this summer, and he'd be honored if I took it on our annual trip, which I did. And it was kind of neat. I really got into it because it's 101 horsepower. It goes fast. I haven't had it into high gear because I'm not doing over 140. Get that. But anyhow, I had to take it back, returned it. And the day it was just happened last week, I was absolutely devastated when I went to take it back. Caught me by surprise. Has anybody ever been caught by surprise by something like that? I didn't think it bothered me. You wouldn't believe I haven't felt feelings like that for a long time. So I took it back, and I was supposed to meet with my buddy, but he wasn't there, so I left him at his shop, and I called him later, and we had a little chat, and he said, yeah, well, maybe we'll chat further. And then I called him the next day, and says, you know, I want to talk about a price. I want to talk about the price. I didn't have the resources available. So, and the area that I haven't got nothing definite, I got to go see it, but the area it is, it come into X amount of dollars. Right? It was in that realm. And I don't have that, and there was only one place where I know where I could get that, and it was to ask my brother. Because he has it. Oh, I'm getting a hard time right now just talking about this. Believe me, it's really, because I've just never done nothing like that, right? And so I decided I was going to do it, and I went and I kind of brought it up and along, and then I asked him. And it was one of the hardest things I ever had to do recently in the last, I don't know how many years. I'd rather be in a brawl on the streets with knives and guns than to go ask somebody to lend, not to lend it to me, to give it to me. Big difference. I can do lend. Don't like doing it, but I can do lend. But give? Well, holy, the gut's going. And maybe you can feel that thinking about it for yourself. Eh? The Klingon that was in my sewer pipe here just blew me away. But I did it. And as I was telling the story, and I finally asked him, you know what my brother said to me? He said, you know what? If you wouldn't have asked me, I'd have really been ticked off at you. Yeah. So it don't matter who you are, or how good you are, or if you've got 42, 43 years of being in this like I have, I can tell you, you probably still got some Klingons. We all do. And it's not a big deal. I could have just walked away and buried it and said no and just gone on with my life and not bothered, and I'd have been totally happy, and I got a lot of great experiences lined up, and not a problem. Okay? But that's not what I needed to do for me, you see, because it was put into my experience, and our facilitator of the course last week said some comments to me and about my position. My position? That's the next topic. Get off your position. And when the clarity come, and she put it to me, I felt like I was a little dog that had just messed on the kitchen floor, and I got my nose rubbed in it to say, don't do that. That's not how you do this thing called life. And that was a rude awakening for me inside, and I actually did that. And you might say, well, that's not a big deal, I can do that. Well, maybe you can, but I couldn't up until now. And so there's lots of things that other people can do that just absolutely terrify you. Okay? However, those are the things that we need to do. And they may be easy. Like, how many people like to come up here and say a few words right now? Most people wouldn't, not for you, Stefan, you don't have to, because he doesn't have a problem, but most of us would terrify us. Not me, I can do that, but doing what I just did terrified me, absolutely terrified me. You see what I mean? It's not about anybody or anything else. Get that out of the mind. Ernest Holmes said there are no obstructions to the operation of truth. There are no obstructions to the operation of truth through me and by means of me. That is the position that we want to take, and we have to be willing to clean the drain. Okay? And your life might be working really good. I can guarantee it probably needs a tune-up in an area or two, and you never know what kind of Kling-On you're going to have. So the whole topic of this talk, of course, is around the standard thing called forgiveness. Has anybody ever heard me talk about that before? At least 8 out of every 10 talks, because it's always there. But I always try to get a little bit different a twist on it. So this one has got nothing to do with anything other than forgiving oneself of anything that we're holding that is an obstruction to the operation of this truth. We don't have to bring God into our life. We don't have to be more spiritual. We're already spiritual enough. We all just have to release that which is in opposition to what we truly desire to experience in life, which I think is peace, prosperity, fulfillment, and happiness. So the first thing is get off your position. Surrender. Anybody ever do any of those courses where you got to surrender?
Yeah.
Anybody ever heard of Jack Bowman, wrote the Mastermind Journal? I met Jack and I had a couple of personal experiences with him. He mentored me a couple of times, and I was having a real issue with his Mastermind Journal about surrender. I took him to task on that, face to face. Because I changed that step, because I'm not surrendering to anybody or anything. Anybody ever and after the session, I don't know what exactly it was that he said, but I saw that in a totally different light, you see. And it's just those things that we're on our position about that we have to see in a different light. Jesus said in Matthew, in the parable of the wineskin, he talked about no man puts new cloth on old cloth. You don't sew on new cloth on the old cloth because it doesn't really work. Temporarily maybe. But he also said you don't put new wine into an old wineskin. They changed it to bottle, but it's wineskin. You can't do that. You have to put new wine in a new wineskin, because wine in those days when it was poured hadn't finished the fermentation process. And an old wineskin was made out of sheep gut and things like that, so over a period of time it got hard, brittle, and wasn't as viable and movable as a new one would. So if you try to put a new wine into an old wineskin, it will rupture it. If you try to put a new idea into a mind that's holding on to an old position, it won't work. It can't work. One has to be able to be willing to put new ideas into a new receptivity, to be open and receptive. So that means we have to get off our position and get rid of our sacred cows. Moo! Anybody got a sacred cow?
Yeah.
Some people call them, well, in my opinion, opinions are sacred cows. And people will be right about it, they'll defend it, they'll take it right to the wall, and that kind of flows in to another point here, which is very important, is to know that, yes, we've got to get off our position. However, the next idea is you always get to be right. It doesn't matter what is going on in your life, you always get to be right about it. Some people say, well, that's not true. I like to be wrong sometimes. You like to be right about being wrong. I'll guarantee you, don't matter what you tell me, you want to be right about that. And if you tell me something and you say, I don't really want to be right about it, that's what you want to be right about. You see what I'm getting? So, in order to really help us, we have to have a willingness to get off our position. And then we we have to realize that we always get to be right. So it's only a question of what do I want to be right about. I got two really good friends that I did some counseling with 25 years ago. And both of these ladies had one thing. They had serious men issues. They were always getting really terrible relationships. And so they both had this idea that all men are like that. And I told them, I said, not all men are like that. I'm not quite like that, am I? No, well, you see, the only ones that are like that are the ones that you get because you need them. Well, that's the first thing that gets a reaction from somebody. Okay, they need them. And I said, you do this counseling program and deal with your stuff. There's going to be a problem in 2 years. And they said, what's the problem? And they don't know each other, these two ladies, by the way. I said, well, within 2 years, you're going to meet a real nice man and get married, and I'm going to do the wedding. I will not tell you what these nice ladies said to me. Okay? But the first thing I had to do was get them to be willing to get off their position. The next thing is to get them to understand that you always get to be right. What is it that you want to be right about? Then the next thing is, okay, do you want to be part of the problem or do you want to be part of the solution? Because you're going to be one, and if you say, well, you're going to default and it'll just be what it is, and then you get to say to yourself, part of the solution. If it doesn't, part of the problem. Okay, it doesn't matter. So that's what you got to do. So we worked with the two ladies. It was about 7, 8 months, 9 months, one-on-one. And then they went about doing their things, and there's a few touch-ups, and then I got this call from both of them. You wouldn't believe what happened. Yes, I would. I met this guy, and you wouldn't believe he's the nicest man I've ever met. We're going to get married. Would you do the wedding? And of course, they both knew what I was going to say somewhere along in the wedding. I told you so. Were they waiting for it? Absolutely. Did I do it? Absolutely. Did they say, we were waiting for you to do it? Absolutely. That's exactly what happened. By the way, they're still happily married today, both of them. Okay? That's because they were willing to get off their position. They were willing to give up what they were right about before, and they were willing to be part of the solution and not the problem. And the good start to doing that is the next idea. Establish and respect healthy boundaries and limits. We need to do that in our relationships with people. Other than that, they can get into being a mess. Anybody ever do that? And that means you've got to have boundaries and limits with others, boundaries and limits with yourself. Oh, that's the tough one. And you've got to learn to respect other people's boundaries and limits. I'll tell my favorite story, Anna. Oh, Anna and I, yeah, it's good. It's really because it's true. It's so sweet. It fits right in there. When we were going out after a while, one time they asked Anna to marry me, and she got all flustered. Had the willies and everything like that, so I just left it for a couple of months, and then I asked her again. All the same thing. She got the willies and that. Yeah, there's a lot of rhetoric, and I said to her, okay, well, I'm going to make a boundary and limit on this. I'll make a commitment to you today not to bring that up again, ever, until you bring it up. Sound good? Yeah. Well, it was about 2 years later, one day we were going along. True story, folks. One day she says to me, do you still love me? I go, yeah. She said, well, you haven't asked me to marry you lately. I said, are you bringing it up? And honestly, have you ever heard of an engagement happening like that before? That was how it happened. That's how it happened. don't matter, the time don't matter, was the event, and that's how it happened. I don't think anybody's ever got engaged that way before, but that's exactly what happened. And that's exactly how it happened there. So, you know, and it was me doing what I needed to do, because I believe it was the right thing. And it was waiting for Anna to get off her position.
Oh, no.
True story. So, you know, it's very important for us to be in integrity with ourselves, to establish those boundaries and limits, to respect, you know, our own, and to respect other people's. You know, one of the biggest challenges where this happens in the work I do, it ends up, I end up getting called from parents who've got a problem with a child that's a drug addict. Anybody know about that? I know about it from the other end. I was a child who was a drug addict, so, you know, there's two sides to the story. And really, the parents want me to help and counsel. And generally, it's not the kid that needs the counseling, it's the parents. Because, you see, parents don't understand how it works with drug addicts, full-fledged drug addicts. They're professionals, and keep in mind, I'm talking about, it could be the most loveliest person in the world, but once they're a drug addict, they all behave the same way. They're all me first, and they go to things like, well, if you don't give me any money, I'm going to kill myself. And that happens lots of times. And it's about the parents coming to a place where they've got to lay some boundaries and limits and stick to them. They've got to be able to do that, because like I tell them, you know what, you're killing them anyhow. It's just a long, slower process. Now, does that always work? Sometimes people kill themselves and sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's a healing. We can't predict all of that. But Raymond Charles Barker said, the decision to let go of that which has completed its course in your experience is even more important than the decision to welcome new ideas. You cannot walk forward by looking backwards. You intuitively know what should depart from your life. We all know that. However, the problem is sometimes we can be on the river in Egypt, the Nile. And we have to watch that, because I tell you, it was one of the biggest issues I've ever had. And I want to close with a really neat quote from Ernest Holmes here today. And I'll leave this for you to think about. When we learn to put away our petty virtues with our petty vices, then shall we see clearly not what virtue or vice is, but what the truth is. The mind which condemns understands not the truth of being, and the heart which would shut the door of its bosom to one who is mistaken strangles its own life, closing its eyes to a greater vision. The biggest life is one which includes the most. Not that we foster vice or place a premium on wrongdoing, but that we understand the frailties of the human nature and learn to overlook much. To him who loves much, much is forgiven. So I know for you, as I know for myself, that we are a divine idea in the mind of God, and our time is coming. And we have an open, clear, free-flowing channel of God's love, energy, wisdom, kindness, and prosperity. So I declare it, I accept it, I know it to be so, and so it is. Thank you.